Welcome to a reprise of some highlights from the 24-hour Byrothon we performed here 2 months ago and will never do again. This is a second chance to enjoy The Ghost, which will loom even more clearly as darkness descends. We'll skip some choice items from Byron's time at Trinity because the first session of the Byrothon can be found immortalized on YouTube. We'll begin tonight with Byron setting out in 1809 at the age of 21 for his first tour of the continent, or more exactly, we'll start with the poem with which he came back and which made him famous, Childe Harold. First, we'll hear the Song of Farewell, the title character sings, and then 3 passages from Canto 2, where Byron meditates on the land with which his author has become indissolubly associated, Greece, ancient and modern.
From Childe Harold, Canto the First. Adieu, adieu. My native shore fades o'er the waters blue. The night winds sigh, the breakers roar, and shrieks the wild sea mew. Yon sun that sets upon the sea we follow in his flight. Farewell awhile to him, and thee, my native land. Good night. A few short hours, and he will rise to give the morrow birth, and I shall hail the main and skies, but not my mother earth. Deserted is my own good hall, its hearth is desolate. Wild weeds are gathering on the wall, the dog howls at the gate. Come hither, hither, my little page. Why dost thou weep and wail? Or dost thou dread the billows' rage, or tremble at the gale? But dash the teardrop from thine eye, our ship is swift and strong. Our fleetest falcon scarce can fly more merrily along. Let winds be shrill, let waves roll high, I fear not wave nor wind. Yet marvel not, Sir Childe, that I am sorrowful in mind, for I have from my father gone, a mother whom I love, and have no friend, save these alone, but thee, and one above. My father blessed me fervently, but did not much complain, but sorely will my mother sigh till I come back again. Enough, enough, my little lad, such tears become thine eye. If I thy guileless bosom had, mine own would not be dry. Come hither, hither, my staunch yeoman. Why dost thou look so pale? Or dost thou dread a French foeman, or shiver at the gale? Deem'st thou I tremble for my life? Sir Childe, I'm not so weak, but thinking on an absent wife will blanch a faithful cheek. My spouse and boys dwell near thy hall along the bordering lake. And when they on their father call, what answer shall she make? Enough, enough, my yeoman good. Thy grief let none gainsay, but I, who am of lighter mood, will laugh to flee away. For who would trust the seeming sighs of wife or paramour? Fresh fears will dry the bright blue eyes we late saw streaming o'er. For pleasures past I do not grieve, nor perils gathering near. My greatest grief is that I leave no thing that claims a tear. And now I'm in the world alone, upon the wide, wide sea. But why should I for others groan when none will sigh for me? Perchance my dog will whine in vain, till fed by stranger hands, but long ere I come back again, he'd tear me where he stands. With thee, my bark, I'll swiftly go athwart the foaming brine, nor care what land thou bear'st me to, so not again to mine. Welcome, welcome, ye dark blue waves, and when you fail my sight, welcome, ye deserts, and ye caves, my native land, good night.
Fair Greece, sad relic of departed worth, immortal, though no more, though fallen, great. Who now shall lead thy scattered children forth, and long accustomed bondage uncreate? Not such thy sons, who whilom did await the hopeless warriors of a willing doom. In bleak Thermopylae's sepulchra strait, oh, who that gallant spirit shall resume? Leap from Erotus' banks and call thee from the tomb? Spirit of freedom, when on Phile's brow thou satst with Thrasybulus and his train, couldst thou forebode the dismal hour which now dims the green beauties of thine Attic plain? Not 30 tyrants now enforce the chain, but every carle can lord it over thy land, nor rise thy sons, but idly rail in vain, trembling beneath the scourge of Turkish hand, from birth till death enslaved, in word, in deed, unmanned. In all save form alone, how changed, and who that marks the fire still sparkling in each eye? Who but would deem their bosoms burned anew with thy unquenched beam, lost liberty? And many dream with all the hours nigh that gives them back their father's heritage. For foreign arms and aid they fondly sigh, nor solely dare encounter hostile rage, or tear their name defiled from slavery's mournful page. Hereditary bondsmen, know ye not who would be free themselves must strike the blow? By their right arms the conquest must be wrought. Will Gaul or Muscovite redress ye? No. True, they may lay your proud despoilers low, but not for you will freedom's altars flame. Shades of the Helots, triumph over thy foe. Greece, change thy lords, thy state is still the same. Thy glorious day is over, but not thine years of shame.
This must he feel, the true-born son of Greece. If Greece one true-born patriot still can boast, not such as prate of war, but skulk in peace, the bondman's peace, who sighs for all he lost. Yet with smooth smile his tyrant can accost, and wields the slavish sickle, not the sword. Ah, Greece, they love thee least who owe thee most, their birth, their blood, and that sublime record of hero sires who shame thy now degenerate horde. When riseth Lacedaemon's hardihood, when Thebes Epaminondas rears again, when Athens' children are with hearts endued, when Grecian mothers shall give birth to men, then mayest thou be restored, but not till then. 1,000 years scarce serve to form a state, an hour may lay it in the dust, and when can man its shattered splendor renovate, recall its virtues back, and vanquish time and fate? And yet how lovely in thine age of woe, land of lost gods and godlike men art thou, thy vales of evergreen, thy hills of snow, proclaim thee nature's varied favourite now. Thy fanes, thy temples to thy surface bow, commingling slowly with heroic earth, broke by the share of every rustic plough, so perish monuments of mortal birth, so perish all in turn, save well-recorded worth. Save where some solitary column mourns above its prostrate brethren of the cave, save where Tritonia's airy shrine adorns Colonna's cliff and gleams along the wave, save o'er some warrior's half-forgotten grave where the grey stones and unmolested grass ages, but not oblivion, feebly brave, while strangers only not regardless pass, lingering, like me, perchance, to gaze and sigh, alas. Yet are thy skies as blue, thy crags as wild, sweet are thy groves and verdant are thy fields, thine olive ripe as when Minerva smiled, and still his honeyed wealth Hymettus yields. There the blithe bee his fragrant fortress builds, the free-born wanderer of thy mountain air. Apollo still thy long, long summer gilds, still in his beam Mendeli's marbles glare. Art, glory, freedom fail, but nature still is fair. Where'er we tread, 'tis haunted, holy ground. No earth of thine is lost in vulgar mould, but one vast realm of wonder spreads around, and all the muses' tales seem truly told. Till the sense aches with gazing to behold the scenes our earliest dreams have dwelt upon. Each hill and dale, each deepening glen and wold defies the power which crushed thy temples gone. Age shakes Athena's tower, but spares grey Marathon. The sun, the soil, but not the slave the same, unchanged in all except its foreign lord, preserves alike its bounds and boundless fame, the battlefield where Persia's victim horde first bowed beneath the brunt of Hellas' sword. As on the morn to distant glory dear, when Marathon became a magic word, which uttered to the hearer's eye appear, the camp, the host, the fight, the conqueror's career. The flying Mede his shaftless broken bow, the fiery Greek his red pursuing spear, mountains above, earth's, ocean's plain below, death in the front, destruction in the rear. Such was the scene. What now remaineth here? What sacred trophy marks the hallowed ground, recording freedom's smile and Asia's tear? The rifled urn, the violated mound, the dust thy courser's hoof, rude stranger, spurns around.
Yet, to the remnants of thy splendor past, shall pilgrims, pensive but unwearied, throng. Long shall the voyager with the Ionian blast hail the bright climb of battle and of song. Long shall thine annals an immortal tongue fill with the fame of thy youth of many a shore, boast of the aged, lesson of the young, which sages venerate and bards adore, as Pallas and the Muse unveil their awful lore. The parted bosom clings to wonted home, if aught that's kindred cheer the welcome hearth. He that is lonely, hither let him roam, and gaze complacent on congenial earth. Greece is no lightsome land of social mirth, but he whom sadness sootheth may abide, and scarce regret the region of his birth, when, wandering slow by Delphi's sacred side, or gazing o'er the plains where Greek and Persian died. Let such approach this consecrated land, and pass in peace along the magic waste. But spare its relics. Let no busy hand deface the scenes already how defaced. Not for such purpose were these altars placed. Revere the remnants nations once revered, so may our country's name be undisgraced, so mayest thou prosper where thy youth was reared, by every honest joy of love and life endeared.
By the middle of March 1812, Byron may have awoken to find himself famous, but over the next few years, the fame became coloured by scandal. We shall hear 4 pieces now that express something of the turmoil in his personal life and the poetic ends to which he turned it.
Letter to Caroline Lamb, spring 1812. I never supposed you artful, We're all selfish. Nature did that for us. But even when you attempt deceit occasionally, you cannot maintain it, which is all the better. Want of success will curb the tendency. Every word you utter, every line you write, proves you to be either sincere or a fool. Now, as I know you are not the one, I must believe you the other. I never knew a woman with greater or more pleasing talents. General, as in women, they should be, something of everything and too much of nothing. But these are unfortunately coupled with a total want of common conduct. For instance, the note to your page. Do you suppose I delivered it? Or did you mean that I should? I did not, of course. Then your heart, my poor Caro, what a little volcano that pours lava through your veins, and yet I cannot wish it a bit colder to make a marble slab of, as you sometimes see, to understand my foolish metaphor, brought in vases, tables, etc. from Vesuvius, when hardened after an eruption. To drop my detestable tropes and figures, you know I have always thought you the cleverest, most agreeable, absurd, amiable, perplexing, dangerous, fascinating little being that lives now or ought to have lived 2,000 years ago. I won't talk to you of beauty. I am no judge. But our beauties cease to be so when near you, and therefore you either have some or something better. And now, Caro, this nonsense is the first and last compliment, if it be such, I ever paid you. You have often reproached me wanting in this respect, but others will make up the deficiency. Come to Lord Grey's. At least do not let me keep you away. All that you so often say, I feel. Can more be said or felt? This same prudence is tiresome enough, but one must maintain it, or what can one do to be saved? Keep to it. If you write it all, write as usual, but do as you please. Only, as I never see you, basta.
I speak not, I trace not, I breathe not thy name. There is grief in the sound, there were guilt in the fame. But the tear that now burns on my cheek may impart the deep thoughts that dwell in that silence of heart. Too brief for our passion, too long for our peace were those hours. Can their joy or their bitterness cease? We repent, we abjure, we will break from our chain, we will part, we will fly to, united again. Oh, thine be the gladness, and mine be the guilt. Forgive me, adored one, forsake if thou wilt. But the heart which I bear shall expire undebased, and man shall not break it, whatever thou mayest. And stern to the haughty, but humble to thee, this soul in its bitterest blackness shall be. And our days seem as swift, and our moments more sweet, with thee at my side, than with worlds at our feet. One sigh of thy sorrow, one look of thy love, shall turn me or fix, shall reward or reprove. And the heartless may wonder at all we resign. Thy lips shall reply not to them, but to mine.
When we two parted in silence and tears, half broken-hearted to sever for years, pale grew thy cheek and cold, colder thy kiss. Truly that hour foretold sorrow to this. The dew of the morning sunk chill on my brow. It felt like the warning of what I feel now. Thy vows are all broken, and light is thy fame. I hear thy name spoken, and share in its shame. They name thee before me, and knelled to mine ear. A shudder comes o'er me. Why wert thou so dear? They know not I knew thee, who knew thee too well. Long, long shall I rue thee, too deeply to tell. In secret we met. In silence I grieve that thy heart could forget, thy spirit deceive. If I should meet thee after long years, how should I greet thee? With silence and tears.
There's not a joy the world can give like that it takes away. When the glow of early thought declines in feeling's dull decay, is not on youth's smooth cheek the blush alone which fades so fast, but the tender bloom of heart is gone ere youth itself be past. Then the few whose spirits float above the wreck of happiness are driven o'er the shoals of guilt or ocean of excess. The magnet of their course is gone, or only points in vain the shore to which their shivered sail shall never stretch again. Then the mortal coldness of the soul, like death, itself comes down. It cannot feel for others' woe, it dare not dream its own. That heavy chill has frozen o'er the fountain of our tears, and though the eye may sparkle still, 'tis where the ice appears. Though wit may flash from fluent lips and mirth distract the breast, through midnight hours that yield no more their former hopes of rest, 'tis but as ivy leaves around the ruined turret wreath, all green and wildly fresh without, but worn and grey beneath. Oh, could I feel as I have felt, or be what I have been, or weep as I could once have wept o'er many a vanished scene, as springs in deserts found seem sweet, all brackish though they be, so midst the withered waste of life, those tears would flow to me.
I should perhaps reassure you that things will become a bit more fun in part 2. But in the meantime, we follow Byron into destruction and darkness. First, a tale from the Old Testament that will be well known to those with children or indeed grandchildren taking GCSE. Secondly, the poem entitled Darkness, written in Switzerland in 1816, the year without a summer, consequent on the massive volcanic explosion of Mount Tambora in the Dutch East Indies. Meanwhile, Mary Shelley was writing Frankenstein.
The destruction of Sennacherib. The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold. And the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea when the blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. Like the leaves of the forest when summer is green, that host with their banners at sunset were seen. Like the leaves of the forest when autumn has blown, that host on the morrow lay withered and strown. For the angel of death spread his wings on the blast and breathed in the face of the foe as he passed, and the eyes of the sleepers waxed deadly and chill, and their hearts but once heaved and forever grew still. And there lay the steed with his nostril all wide, but through it there rolled not the breath of his pride, and the foam of his gasping lay white on the turf, and cold as the spray of the rock-beating surf. And there lay the rider, distorted and pale, with the dew on his brow and the rust on his mail. And the tents were all silent, the banners alone, the lances unlifted, the trumpet unblown. And the widows of Ashur are loud in their wail, and the idols are broke in the temple of Baal. And the might of the Gentile, unsmoothed by the sword, has melted like snow in the glance of the Lord.
I had a dream, which was not all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished, and the stars did wander darkling in the eternal space, rayless and pathless, and the icy earth swung blind and blackening in the moonless air. Morn came and went, and came and brought no day, and men forgot their passions in the dread of this their desolation, and all hearts were chilled into a selfish prayer for light. And they did live by watchfires, and the thrones, the palaces of crowned kings, the huts, the habitations of all things which dwell were burnt for beacons. Cities were consumed, and men were gathered round their blazing homes to look once more into each other's face. Happy were those who dwelt within the eye of the volcanoes and their mountain torch. Fearful hope was all the world contained. Forests were set on fire, but hour by hour they fell and faded, and the crackling trunks extinguished with a crash, and all was black. The brows of men by the despairing light wore an unearthly aspect, as by fits the flashes fell upon them. Some lay down and hid their eyes and wept, and some did rest their chins upon their clenched hands and smiled, and others hurried to and fro and fed their funeral piles with fuel and looked up with mad disquietude on the dull sky, the pall of a past world. And then again with curses cast them down upon the dust and gnashed their teeth and howled. The wild birds shrieked and, terrified, did flutter on the ground and flap their useless wings. The wildest brutes came tame and tremulous, and vipers crawled and twined themselves among the multitude, hissing but stingless. they were slain for food. And war, which for a moment was no more, did glut himself again. A meal was bought with blood, and each sat sullenly apart, gorging himself in gloom. No love was left. All earth was but one thought, and that was death, immediate and inglorious. And the pang of famine fed upon all entrails. Men died, and their bones were tombless as their flesh. The meagre by the meagre were devoured. E'en dogs assailed their masters, all save one, and he was faithful to a course, and kept the birds and beasts and famished men at bay, till hunger clung them, or the dropping dead lured their lank jaws. Himself sought out no food, but with a piteous and perpetual moan, and a quick, desolate cry, licking the hand which answered not with a caress, he died. The crowd was famished by degrees, but two of an enormous city did survive, and they were enemies. They met beside the dying embers of an altar place, where had been heaped a mass of holy things for an unholy usage. They raked up, and shivering scraped with their cold skeleton hands the feeble ashes, and their feeble breath blew for a little life, and made a flame which was a mockery. Then they lifted up their eyes as it grew lighter, and beheld each other's aspects, saw and shrieked and died. Even of their mutual hideousness they died, unknowing who he was upon whose brow famine had written fiend. The world was void. The populous and the powerful was a lump, seasonless, herbless, treeless, manless, lifeless, a lump of death, a chaos of hard clay. The rivers, lakes, and ocean all stood still, and nothing stirred within their silent depths. Ships, sailorless, lay rotting on the sea, and their masts fell down piecemeal. As they dropped, they slept on the abyss without a surge. The waves were dead. The tides were in their grave. The moon, their mistress, had expired before. The winds were withered in the stagnant air, and the clouds perished. Darkness had no need of aid from them. She was the universe.
Two more items from Byron's time in the Alps with the Shelleys. Both are the outcome of Byron's reflections on isolation. The first inspired by the historical figure of François Bonivard, a 16th century Protestant activist, as we might now say, imprisoned in the castle of Chillon. The second, one of several monologues by the title character of Byron's drama, Manfred, described by the author as a kind of magician who is dominated by a species of remorse, the cause of which is left half explained.
Sonnet on Chillon. Eternal spirit of the chainless mind, brightest in dungeons, liberty thou art. For there thy habitation is the heart which love of thee alone can bind. And when thy sons to fetters are consigned, to fetters and the damp vault's dayless gloom. Their country conquers with their martyrdom, and freedom's fame finds wings on every wind. Chillon, thy prison is a holy place, and thy sad floor an altar. For 'twas trod until his very steps have left a trace, worn as if thy cold pavement were a sod by Bonnivard. May none those marks efface, for they appeal from tyranny to God.
Glorious orb, the idol of early nature and the vigorous race of undiseased mankind, the giant sons of the embraced angels with a sex more beautiful than they, which did draw down the erring spirits which can ne'er return. Most glorious orb, that wert to worship ere the mystery of thy making was revealed. Thou earliest minister of the Almighty, which gladdened on their mountain tops the hearts of the Chaldean shepherds till they poured themselves in orisons. Thou material God and representative of the unknown, whose force thee for his shadow, thou chief star, center of many stars, which makest our earth endurable, and temperest the hues and hearts of all who walk within thy rays. Sire of seasons, monarch of the climes, and whose dwell in them, for near or far our inborn spirits have a tint of thee. Even our outward aspects thou dost rise and shine and set in glory. Fare thee well, I ne'er shall see thee more. As my first glance of love and wonder was not thee, then take my latest look. Thou wilt not beam on one to whom the gifts of life and warmth have been a more fatal nature. He is gone. I follow.
So to close the first part of this recital, we return to Childe Harold, to which Byron himself returned after his departure from Britain in 1816 into what turned out to be permanent exile. The first is an extract meditating on the fall of Napoleon, quote, "the greatest, not the worst of men," and the second, the invocation of ocean, with which the whole poem draws towards a close.
There is a very life in our despair, vitality of poison, a quick root which feeds these deadly branches. For it were as nothing did we die, but life will suit itself to sorrow's most detested fruit, like to the apples on the Dead Sea shore, all ashes to the taste. Did man compute existence by enjoyment, and count o'er such hours 'gainst years of life, say, would he name 70? The psalmist numbered out the years of man, they are enough. And if thy tale be true, thou who didst grudge him in that fleeting span more than enough, thou fatal Waterloo, millions of tongues record thee, and anew their children's lips shall echo them and say, here, where the sword-united nations drew, our countrymen were warring on that day. And this is much, and all which will not pass away. There sunk the greatest, nor the worst of men, whose spirit antithetically mixed one moment of the mightiest, and again on little objects with like firmness fixed. Extreme in all things hadst thou been betwixt, thy throne had still been thine, or never been. For daring made thy rise as fall, thou seekest even now to reassume the imperial mien, and shake again the world, the thunderer of the scene. Conqueror and captive of the earth art thou. She trembles at thee still, and thy wild name was ne'er more bruited in men's minds than now that thou art nothing, save the jest of fame, who wooed thee once thy vassal, and became the flatterer of thy fierceness, till thou wert a god unto thyself, nor less the same to the astounded kingdoms all inert, who deemed thee for a time whate'er thou didst assert. O more or less than man, in high or low, battling with nations, flying from the field, now making monarchs' necks thy footstool, now more than thy meanest soldier taught to yield. An empire thou couldst crush, command, rebuild, but govern not thy pettiest passion, nor, however deeply in men's spirits skilled, look through thine own, nor curb the lust of war, nor learn that tempted, fate will leave the loftiest star.
Yet well thy soul hath brooked the turning tide with that untaught innate philosophy, which, be it wisdom, coldness, or deep pride, is gall and wormwood to an enemy. When the whole host of hatred stood hard by to watch and mock thee shrinking, thou hast smiled with a sedate and all-enduring eye. When fortune fled her spoiled and favourite child, he stood unbowed beneath the ills upon him piled. Sager than in thy fortunes, for in them ambition steeled thee on too far to show that just habitual scorn which could contemn men and their thoughts. 'Twas wise to feel, not so to wear it ever on thy lip and brow, and spurn the instruments thou wert to use, till they were turned into thine overthrow. 'Tis but a worthless world to win or lose, so hath it proved to thee, and all such lot who choose. If, like a tower upon a headlong rock, thou hadst been made to stand or fall alone, such scorn of man had helped to brave the shock. But men's thoughts were the steps which paved thy throne. Their admiration thy best weapon shone. The part of Philip's son was thine, not then, unless aside thy purple had been thrown, like stern Diogenes, to mock at men. For sceptred cynics, earth were far too wide a den. But quiet to quick bosoms is a hell, and there hath been thy bane. There is a fire and motion of the soul which will not dwell in its own narrow being, but aspire beyond the fitting medium of desire, and, but once kindled, quenchless evermore, preys upon high adventure, nor can tire of aught but rest. A fever at the core, fatal to him who bears, to all who ever bore. This makes the madmen who have made men mad by their contagion. Conquerors and kings, founders of sects and systems, to whom add sophists, bards, statesmen, all unquiet things which stir too strongly the soul's secret springs, and are themselves the fools to those they fool. Envied, yet how unenviable! What stings are theirs! One breast laid open were a school which would unteach mankind the lust to shine or rule. Their breath is agitation, and their life a storm whereon they rise to sink at last, and yet so nursed and bigoted to strife, that should their days, surviving perils past, melt to calm twilight, they feel overcast with sorrow and supineness, and so die, e'en as a flame unfed, which runs to waste with its own flickering, or a sword laid by, which eats into itself and rusts inglorious lie. He who ascends to mountain tops shall find the loftiest peaks most wrapped in clouds and snow. He who surpasses or subdues mankind must look down upon the hate of those below. Though high above the sun of glory glow, and far beneath the earth and ocean spread, round him are icy rocks, and loudly blow contending tempests on his naked head, and thus reward the toils which to those summits led.
Apostrophe to the ocean. There is a pleasure in the pastor's woods. There is a rapture on the lonely shore. There is society where none intrudes. By the deep sea and the music in its roar. I love not man the less, but nature more. From these are interviews in which I'll steal from all I may be or have been before, to mingle with the universe and feel what I can near express, yet cannot all conceal. Roll on, thou deep and dark blue ocean, roll! 10,000 fleets sweep over thee in vain. Man marks the earth with ruin, his control. Stop with the shore upon the watering plain. The wrecks are all thy deeds, none doth remain. A shadow of man's savage, save his own, when for a moment, like a drop of rain, he sinks into the depth with bubbling groans. Without a grave, unkneeled, uncoffined, and unknown. Those glorious mirrors where the almighty forms glass itself in tempest in all time, calm or convulsed, in breeze or gale or storm. Ice in the pole or the torrent slime, dark, heaving, boundless, endless, and sublime. The image of eternity, the throne of the invisibility. Even from the slime, the monster of the deeps are made. Each zone obeys thee. Those goes forth, dead fathomless, alone. And I have loved thee, ocean, and my joy of youthful sport was on my breast to be born. Like the bubbles onwards from a boy I wanted with the breakers, they to me were a delight, and if the freshing sea made them terror, 'tis was pleasing fear. For I was, it were a child of thee, and trusted to the billows far and near, and laid my hand upon the main, as I do here.
With all its sinful doings, I must say that Italy is a pleasant place to me, who love to see the sun shine every day, and vines not nailed to walls, from tree to tree festooned, much like the back scene of a play or melodram which people flock to see when the first act is ended by a dance in vineyards copied from the south of France. I like on autumn evenings to ride out without being forced to bid my groom be sure my cloak is round his middle strapped about, because the sky's not the most secure. I know that too that if stopped upon my route, where the green alleys windingly allure, reeling with grapes, red wagons choke the way. In England, 'twould be dung, dust, or a dray. I also like to dine on Beccaficus, to see the sun set, sure he'll rise tomorrow, not through a misty morning, twinkling weak as a drunken man's dead eye in maudlin sorrow, but with all heaven to himself. The day will break as beauteous as cloudless, nor be forced to borrow that sort of farthing candlelight which glimmers where reeking London's smoky cauldron simmers. I love the language, that soft bastard Latin which melts like kisses from a female mouth and sounds as if it should be writ on satin, with syllables which breathe of the sweet south, and gentle liquids gliding all so pat in that not a single accent seems uncouth, like our harsh northern whistling, grunting guttural, which we're obliged to hiss and spit and sputter all. I like the women too, forgive my folly. From the rich peasant cheek of ruddy bronze and large black eyes that flash on you a volley of rays that say 1,000 things at once, to the high dama's brow, more melancholy but clear, and with a wild and liquid glance, heart on her lips and soul within her eyes, soft as her clime and sunny as her skies, Eve of the land which still is paradise, Italian beauty. Didst thou not inspire Raphael, who died in thy embrace and vies with all we know of heaven or can desire in what he hath bequeathed us? In what guise, though flashing from the further of the lyre, would words describe thy past and present glow, while yet Canova can create below?
England, with all thy faults, I love thee still, I said at Calais, and have not forgot it. I like to speak and lucubrate my fill. I like the government, but that is not it. I like the freedom of the press and quill. I like the habeas corpus when we've got it. I like a parliamentary debate, particularly when 'tis not too late. I like the taxes when they're not too many. I like a sea coal fire when not too dear. I like a beefsteak too, as well as any. I have no objection to a pot of beer. I like the weather when it is not rainy. That is, I like 2 months of every year. And so God save the regent, church, and king, which means that I like all and everything. Our standing army and disbanded seamen, pause rate, reform my own, the nation's debt, our little riots just to show we're free men, our trifling bankruptcies in the Gazette, our cloudy climate and our chilly women, all these I can forgive and those forget, and greatly venerate our recent glories, and wish they were not owing to the Tories.
We hear now 2 letters from August 1819. The first to Byron's publisher, John Murray, shortly after the publication of Don Juan, the first 2 cantos. The second to the Countess Teresa Guiccioli, written in English, a language which neither she nor her husband understood, and inscribed in her copy of Madame de Stael's romantic novel Corinne. When Teresa asked Byron to translate it, he refused.
I will answer your friend C.V., who objects to the quick succession of fun and gravity, as if in that case the gravity did not, in intention at least, heighten the fun. His metaphor is that we are never scorched and drenched at the same time. Blessings on his experience. Ask him these questions about scorching and drenching. Did he never play at cricket or walk a mile in hot weather? Did he never spill a dish of tea over his testicles in handing the cup to his charmer, to the great shame of his nankeen breeches? Did he never swim in the sea at noonday with the sun in his eyes and on his head, which all the foam of ocean could not cool? Did he never draw his foot out of a tub of too hot water, damning his eyes and his valets? Did he never inject for a gonorrhea or make water through an ulcerated urethra? Was he ever in a Turkish bath, that marble paradise of sherbet and sodomy? Was he ever in a cauldron of boiling oil like St. John, or in the sulphurous waves of hell, where he ought to be, for his scorching and drenching at the same time? Did he never tumble into a river or lake, fishing, and sit in his wet clothes in the boat or on the bank afterwards, scorched and drenched like a true sportsman? Oh, for breath to utter, but making my compliments. He is a clever fellow for all that, a very clever fellow. You asked me for the plan of Donny Johnny. I have no plan, I had no plan, but I had or have materials. Though if, like Tony Lumpkin, I am to be snubbed, so when I am in spirits, the poem will be naught, and the poet turns serious again. If it don't take, I will leave it off where it is, with all due respect to the public. But if continued, it must be in my own way. You might as well make Hamlet or Diggory act mad in a strait waistcoat as trammel my buffoonery. If I am to be a buffoon, their gestures and my thoughts would only be pitiably absurd and ludicrously constrained. Why man the soul of such writing is its license, at least the liberty of that license, if one likes, not that one should abuse it. It is like trial by jury and peerage, and the habeas corpus, a very fine thing, but chiefly in the reversion, because no one wishes to be tried for the mere pleasure of proving his possession of the privilege. But a truce with these reflections. You are too earnest and eager about a work never intended to be serious. Do you suppose that I could have any intention but to giggle and make giggle? A playful satire with as little poetry as could be helped was what I meant. And as to the indecency, do pray read in Boswell what Johnson, the sullen moralist, says of Prior and Paolo Pagante.
My dearest Teresa, I have read this book in your garden. My love, you were absent, or else I could not have read it. It is a favourite book of yours, and the writer was a friend of mine. You will not understand these English words, and others will not understand them, which is the reason I have not scrawled them in Italian. But you will recognize the handwriting of him who passionately loves you, and you will divine that over a book which was yours, he could only think of love. In that word, beautiful in all languages, but most so in yours, amor mio, is comprised my existence here and hereafter. I feel I exist here, and I fear that I shall exist hereafter, as to what purpose you will decide. My destiny rests with you, and you are a woman, 17 years of age, and 2 out of a convent. I wish that you had stayed there, with all my heart, or at least that I had never met you in your married state. But all this is too late. I love you, and you love me. At least you say so, and act as if you did so, which last is a great consolation in all events. But I more than love you, and cannot cease to love you. Think of me, sometimes, when the Alps and the ocean divide us. But they never will, unless you wish it. B.
Byron began his masterpiece, Don Juan, in late 1818 and continued it up to early 1823 when he left Italy for Greece. To read it in its entirety would take something like 15 hours. So we must be content with a taste from Canto 1. Its opening, and then a scene of bedroom farce that requires no explanation. I want a hero, an uncommon want when every year and month sends forth a new one, till, after cloying the gazettes with cant, the age discovers he is not the true one. Of such as these I should not care to vaunt. I'll therefore take our ancient friend, Don Juan. We all have seen him in the pantomime, sent to the devil, somewhat ere his time. In Seville was he born, a pleasant city, famous for oranges and women. He who has not seen it will be much to pity, so says the proverb, and I quite agree. Of all the Spanish towns is none more pretty. Cadiz, perhaps, but that you soon may see. Don Juan's parents lived beside the river, a noble stream, and called the Guadalquivir. His father's name was Jose. Don, of course, a true hidalgo, free from every stain of Moor or Hebrew blood. He traced his source through the most Gothic gentleman of Spain. A better cavalier ne'er mounted horse, or being mounted ere got down again, than Jose, who begot our hero, who begot, but that's to come. Well, to renew. His mother was a learned lady, famed for every branch of every science known, in every Christian language ever named, with virtues equalled by her wit alone. She made the cleverest people quite ashamed, and even the good with inward envy groan, finding themselves so very much exceeded in their own way by all the things that she did. Now, Donna Inez had, with all her merit, a great opinion of her own good qualities. Neglect, indeed, requires a saint to bear it, and so indeed she was in her moralities. But then she had a devil of a spirit, and sometimes mixed up fancies with realities, and let few opportunities escape of getting her liege lord into a scrape. This was an easy matter, with a man oft in the wrong and never on his guard. And even the wisest do the best they can, have moments, hours, and days so unprepared that you might brain them with their lady's fan, and sometimes ladies hit exceeding hard, and fans turn into falchions in fair hands, and why and wherefore no one understands. 'Tis pity learned virgins ever wed with persons of no sort of education, or gentlemen who, though well born and bred, grow tired of scientific conversation. I don't choose to say much upon this head. I'm a plain man, and in a single station, but, oh, ye lords of ladies intellectual, inform us truly, have they not hen-pecked you all? Don Jose and his lady quarrelled. Why? Not any of the many could divine, though several thousand people chose to try. 'Twas surely no concern of theirs nor mine. I loathe that low vice, curiosity. But if there's anything in which I shine, 'tis in arranging all my friends' affairs, not having of my own domestic cares. And so I interfered.
'Twas midnight. Donna Julia was in bed, sleeping most probably, when at her door arose a clatter might awake the dead, if they had never been awoke before, and if they have been, so we all have read, and are to be so at the least once more. The door wasn't fastened, but with voice and fist, first knocks were heard, then, "Madam, madam, hist! For God's sake, madam, here's my master!" With more than half the city at his back, was ever heard of such a cursed disaster? 'Tis not my fault, I kept good watch, alack! Do, pray, undo the bolt a little faster. They're on the stair now, just now, and in a crack will all be here. Perhaps he yet may fly. Surely the window's not so very high. By this time, Don Alfonso was arrived, with torches, friends, and servants in great number. The major part of them had long been wived, and therefore paused not to disturb the slumber of any wicked woman who contrived by stealth her husband's temples to encumber. Examples of this kind are so contagious. Were one not punished, all would be outrageous. I can't tell how, or why, or what suspicion could enter into Don Alfonso's head, but for a cavalier of his condition, it surely was exceedingly ill-bred, without a word of previous admonition, to hold a levee round his lady's bed, and summon lackeys armed with fire and sword to prove himself the thing he most abhorred. Poor Donna Julia, starting as from sleep, mind, I do not say she had not slept, began at once to scream, to yawn and weep. Her maid, Antonia, who was an adept, contrived to fling the bedclothes in a heap, as if she had just now from out them crept. I can't tell why she should take all this trouble to prove her mistress had been sleeping double, but Julia mistress and Antonia maid appeared like two poor harmless women who, of goblins but still more of men afraid, had thought one man might be deterred by two, and therefore side by side were gently laid until the hours of absence should run through, and truant husband should return and say, "My dear, I was the first to come away." Now Julia found at length a voice and cried, "In heaven's name, Don Alfonso, what do you mean? Has madness seized you? Would that I had died ere such a monster's victim I had been. What might this midnight's violence betide? A sudden fit of drunkenness or spleen? Dare you suspect me, whom the thought would kill? Search then the room." Alfonso said, "I will." He searched, they searched, and rummaged everywhere, closet and clothes press, chest and window seat, and found much linen, lace, and several pair of stockings, slippers, brushes, combs, complete with other articles of ladies' fare to keep them beautiful or leave them neat. Arras they pricked, and curtains with their swords, and wounded several shutters and some boards. Under the bed they searched, and there they found, no matter what, it was not that they sought. They opened windows, gazing if the ground had signs or footmarks, but the earth said naught. And then they stared each other's faces round. 'Tis odd, not one of all those seekers thought, and seems to me almost a sort of blunder, of looking in the bed as well as under.
During this inquisition, Julia's tongue was not asleep. "Yes, search and search," she cried, "insult on insult heap, and wrong on wrong. It was for this that I became a bride, for this in silence I have suffered long, a husband like Alfonso at my side. But now I'll bear no more, nor here remain, if there be law or lawyers in all Spain. Yes, Don Alfonso, husband now no more, if ever you indeed deserve the name, is it worthy of your years? You have 60, 50 or 60, it is all the same. Is it wise or fitting, causeless to explore for facts against a virtuous woman's fame? Ungrateful, perjured, barbarous Don Alfonso, how dare you think your lady would go on so? Is it for this I have disdained to hold the common privileges of my sex, that I have chosen a confessor so old and deaf that any other it would vex, and never once he has had cause to scold, but found my very innocence perplex so much he always doubted I was married? How sorry you will be when I've miscarried. Was it for this that no cortejo heir I yet have chosen from out the youth of Seville? Is it for this I scarce went anywhere, except to bullfights, mass, play, rout, and revel? Is it for this, whate'er my suitors were, I favoured none, nay, was most uncivil? Is it for this that General Count O'Reilly, who took Algiers, declared I used him vilely? Did not the Italian Musico Cazzani sing at my heart 6 months at least in vain? Did not his countryman, Count Corniani, call me the only virtuous wife in Spain? Were there not also Russians, English, many? The Count Stroganoff I put in pain, and Lord Mount Coffeehouse, the Irish peer, who killed himself for love, with wine, last year. Have I not had 2 bishops at my feet, the Duke of Icar and Don Fernan Nunez? And is it thus a faithful wife you treat? I wonder in what quarter now the moon is. I praise your vast forbearance not to beat me also, since the time so opportune is. O valiant man with sword drawn and cocked trigger, now tell me, don't you cut a pretty figure? Was it for this you took your sudden journey, under pretence of business indispensable, with that sublime of rascals your attorney, whom I see standing there and looking sensible of having played the fool? Though both I spurn, he deserves the worst. His conduct's less defensible, because no doubt 'twas for his dirty fee, and not from any love to you nor me. If he comes here to take a deposition, by all means, let the gentleman proceed. You've made the apartment in a fit condition. There's pen and ink for you, sir, when you need. Let everything be noted with precision. I would not you for nothing should be feed, but as my maids undressed, pray, turn your spies out. Oh, sobbed Antonia, I could tear their eyes out. There is the closet. There the toilet, there the antechamber. Search them under, over. There is the sofa, there the great armchair, the chimney. Which would really hold a lover? I wish to sleep, and beg you will take care and make no further noise till you discover the secret cavern of this lurking treasure. And when 'tis found, let me too have that pleasure. And now, Hidalgo, now that you have thrown doubt upon me, confusion over all, pray have the courtesy to make it known who is the man you search for. How do you call him? What's his lineage? Let him but be shown. I hope he's young and handsome. Is he tall? Tell me, and be assured that since you stain my honour thus, it shall not be in vain. At least, perhaps, he has not 60 years. At that age, he would be too old for slaughter, or for so young a husband's jealous fears. Antonia, let me have a glass of water. I am ashamed of having shed these tears. They are unworthy of my father's daughter. My mother dreamed not in my natal hour that I should fall into a monster's power. Perhaps 'tis of Antonia you are jealous. You saw that she was sleeping by my side when you broke in upon us with your fellows. Look where you please, we've nothing, sir, to hide. Only another time I trust you'll tell us, or for the sake of decency abide a moment at the door, that we may be dressed to receive so much good company. And now, sir, I have done, and say no more. The little I have said may serve to show the guileless heart in silence may grieve o'er the wrongs to whose exposure it is slow. I leave you to your conscience as before, 'twill one day ask you why you used me so. God grant you feel not then the bitterest grief. Antonia, where's my pocket handkerchief?
She ceased and turned upon her pillow. Pale she lay, her dark eyes flashing through their tears, like skies that rain and lighten. As a veil waved nor shadowing her wan cheek appears, her streaming hair, the black curls strive but fail to hide the glossy shoulder, which uprears its snow through all. Her soft lips lie apart, and louder than her beating beats her heart. The Signor Don Alfonso stood confused. Antonia bustled round the ransacked room, and turning up her nose with looks abused, her master and his myrmidons, of whom not one, except the attorney, was amused. He, like Achates, faithful to the tomb, so there were quarrels, cared not for the cause, knowing they must be settled by the laws. With prying snub nose and small eyes he stood, following Antonia's motions here and there with much suspicion in his attitude. For reputations he had little care, so that a suit or action were made good. Small pity had he for the young and fair, and ne'er believed in negatives till these were proved by competent false witnesses. But Don Alfonso stood with downcast looks, and truth to say, he made a foolish figure when, after searching in 500 nooks and treating a young wife with so much rigor, he gained no point except some self-rebukes, added to those his lady with such vigor had poured upon him for the last half hour, quick, thick, and heavy as a thunder shower. At first, he tried to hammer an excuse to which the sole reply were tears and sobs and indications of hysterics, whose prologue is always certain throes and throbs, gasps, and whatever else the owners choose. Alfonso saw his wife and thought of Job's. He saw too in perspective her relations, and then he tried to muster all his patience. He stood in act to speak, or rather stammer, but sage Antonia cut him short before the anvil of his speech received the hammer. With, "Pray, sir, leave the room and say no more, or madam dies." Alfonso muttered, "Damn her," but nothing else. The time of words was o'er. He cast a rueful look or two, and did, he knew not wherefore, that which he was bid. With him retired his posse comitatus. The attorney last, who lingered near the door, reluctantly still tarrying there as late as Antonia let him, not a little sore at this most strange and unexplained hiatus in Don Alfonso's facts, which just now wore an awkward look. As he resolved the case, the door was fastened in his legal face. No sooner was it bolted than, "O shame, O sin, O sorrow, and O womankind, how can you do such things and keep your fame, unless this world and t'other too be blind?" Nothing so dear as an unfiltered good name. But to proceed, for there is more behind. With much heartfelt reluctance be it said, young Juan slipped half smothered from the bed.
From Venus to Mars. We end on a more somber note with the poem that Byron wrote on his birthday, 22nd of January 1824. He had set sail for Greece the previous summer, and he spent what turned out to be his remaining time working for the cause of Greek independence. Yesterday marked 200 years since his death at Missolonghi.
On this day, I complete my 36th year. 'Tis time this heart should be unmoved, since others it has ceased to move. Yet though I cannot be beloved, still let me love. My days are in the yellow leaf. The flowers and fruits of love are gone. The worm, the canker, and the grief are mine alone. The fire that on my bosom preys is lone as some volcanic isle. No torch is kindled at its blaze, a funeral pile. The hope, the fear, the jealous care, the exalted portion of the pain and power of love I cannot share, but wear the chain. But 'tis not thus. And 'tis not here such thoughts should shake my soul, nor now, where glory decks the hero's bier or binds his brow. The sword, the banner, and the field, glory and Greece around us see. The Spartan borne upon his shield was not more free. Awake, not Greece, she is awake. Awake, my spirit. Think through whom thy lifeblood tracks its parent lake, and then strike home. Tread those reviving passions down, unworthy manhood. Unto thee indifferent should the smile or frown of beauty be. If thou regretst thy youth, why live? The land of honorable death is here. Up to the field, and give away thy breath. Seek out, less often sought than found, a soldier's grave. For thee, the best. Then look around and choose thy ground and take thy rest.